What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Vanguard Live. It's been a couple days since we've been on live on the air, so really excited to be back. Have some great stuff to break down today. Welcome back, everyone.
Yeah, always good to be back on the mic here for the Vanguard. Super excited to break down some news. Just shoot the shit, get back in the old swing of things. It's been an interesting kind of news period, right? Like obviously things are going on, but it also, I don't know. I feel like so much of the population right around this time has just checked out. I don't know what exactly that is, and I'm not passing any judgment. I mean, I just feel like we're at one of those weird ruts where everything just seems to exist and be going and happening, but what are we supposed to say about it? I don't know. I feel like that's been looming in the air.
Yeah, it has been a little bit of a slow period for news, I feel like, in the last week or so. So, there just hasn't been a ton to talk about for whatever reason. But, we're here to scrape the bottom of the barrel anyway and dredge out some stuff to talk about. Really appreciate everyone tuning in so far. Thanks so much for the comment, Dieter McBusiness, getting my haircut and listening to you guys. Oh, baby. Wow. Well, I hope the haircut turns out well, Dieter.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we've got some good shit to talk about, the ever increasing threat of nuclear war, nothing major, just the fucking everyday shit. No, I'm kidding, obviously. It was funny. I actually saw a hilarious tweet where, favorite dunce on the internet, Matt Iglesias was bemusing about how everybody was so calm about the threat of nuclear war, and he just got ratioed to all shit by this random account that was just like, what the fuck are we supposed to do? And it's just like you just gotta love the fact that like, what the fuck is there for us to say about that? Like, yeah, I hope that doesn't happen, man. That would be fucking terrible. We should de-escalate. Okay, they're done. I've said my fucking piece about that. That's not really my specialty, if you will. But we've got some good shit to talk about. That is our specialty. Going to be talking a little bit about a recent breaking points appearance by a good friend of the show, Glenn Greenwald. He's going to go, he goes on to talk about, the fact that Ed Snowden and his wife are now citizens of Russia, I do believe. They can live out their lives peacefully there, I would imagine. But obviously the media had a different agenda of kind of using that as a tool to kind of portray Edward Snowden as like a longtime Russian asset. And like now he's getting paid out by Putin by getting this like Russian citizenship, all that. So Glenn will break that down later on in the show. Also got some, POTUS rumors from the Sanders camp again to break down. So which one, where do you want to get started today, Gavin?
Well, first I want to get started by shouting out Christina for the $4.99 super chat. Thank you so much, Christina, first super chat of the live stream. Really appreciate that. You're back. Psyched for today's show. Yeah, absolutely. Glad you're here, Christina. Always glad to see you in the chat. Really appreciate the super chat. And yeah, we're glad to be back too. I took a couple days off. There wasn't a ton to comment on, I felt like. So yeah, just kind of taking a few days for ourselves, but glad to be back too, and glad to see all the comrades in the chat. So really, really appreciate that one, Christina. Thank you so much for the first super chat of the live stream. Thank you also, Mariposa. What's up? And everyone else, make sure to hit that like button if you're just tuning in. It's a really great way to help promote the stream in the algorithm, get some more eyeballs on this content. Really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much. But yeah, I think we should probably start with this conversation that just happened on the Hills Rising. This caught my eye this morning because Bernie Sanders is continuing to make some comments suggesting that there is a possibility, there is a timeline out there in which he runs for a third time for president. So I thought this was interesting, not only because of that, but also to see Briahna's reaction and Robbie's reaction. Obviously, two people that are coming at this from opposite sides of the political spectrum. But yeah, this was an interesting discussion. Do you want to comment at all on this before we take a look?
Yeah, I watched this. I watched the kind of clip. I don't know if it was like MSNBC, ABC, wherever Bernie was talking. Let's go ahead and play the clip for a while, and then you and I'll share our thoughts on it. Because admittedly, I do have some mixed feelings about the whole thing, but I think that this will set us up for a good discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look here.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders had this to say when asked if he plans to run for president of the United States again. Let's watch.
Do you plan to run again? That's something, I haven't made that decision. Right now, my focus, and I'll be going around the country dealing with trying to elect often young progressives, often young people of color, who are prepared to stand up for working families and take on big money interests.
Senator Sanders also commented on the public's faith in democracy and government.
You want to restore democracy, have a government that works for ordinary people and has the guts. So, by the way, when you talk about politics, you understand that right now billionaires are putting hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into TV ads. So my advice to the viewers, when you see a TV ad, kind of ask yourself which billionaire is funding it and why. What do they want? How many more tax breaks do they want? How much more corporate welfare do they want? Ask that question.
You were saying before we started doing this segment that that the other guests seem angry about the way Bernie is framed.
Yeah, like during the panel, he was asked whether his age was an impediment to him running. And he said, you know, we should focus on the policies and the things that people support substantively, not identity factors like age or race or gender. And it seemed like some of the panelists were frustrated by him pivoting back to that. You know, he was constantly accused of kind of minimizing the relevance of race and identity and, you know, those kinds of things. But on the other hand, many folks think that the reason he was so popular was because he had the kind of incredible message discipline that you saw right there, and really is unflinching in the way that he talks about working class issues. And polls show that he still is the most viable, if not one of the most viable, if not the most viable in the list of potential Democratic candidates in terms of raw popularity. And you did see a change, I think, in his rhetoric here versus when he was asked about whether he was going to run before. He tended to demur and say, well, I'm not going to challenge Biden. You know, he has the right to incumbency. But as increasingly people are thinking that Biden may not run, it would be interesting to see if Bernie wants to take a third bite at the apple.
Right, and the age question seems pretty silly, given that, I mean, Joe Biden certainly seems older than Bernie Sanders. Right. He isn't. I don't think he is older than him, but he seems.
No, I think they're about the same. They're
about the same age, but Bernie has a lot more energy than Biden, frankly.
And I'd argue some cognitive sharpness as well.
So it will be interesting. I mean, we're increasingly talking about whether Biden will run for second term. I've been pretty in the camp of thinking that he will. If he does run for second term, I don't know what your thought is, but it would seem unlikely to me that that Bernie would challenge him, although maybe not impossible.
By the way, I also think that Biden will run again in 2024, mostly because I think that they know how vulnerable the other establishment corporate kind of Democrats, people like Kamala Harris, people like Pete Buttigieg, I think they know that those folks are incredibly vulnerable to a challenge from a Bernie Sanders or someone like Bernie Sanders. So they know that if they open up that primary process, it's not going to go well for them. That's why I still think that Joe Biden will run in 2024, even if he's, you know, practically a literal corpse.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. I don't know. His health would have to get so bad, because it's already terrible. And yeah, Bernie Sanders is actually 2 years older than Joe Biden, but he couldn't be, you know, he's miles more, you know, with it, as they would say. Like his energy level is up, his cadence is on. You know, honestly, he's still the same Bernie Sanders in that clip that he was standing from the podium, even back in 2016. You know, he plows into the kind of rhetoric that he's always plowed into, pivoting back to the issues, restoring people's faith in democracy, all of these different kinds of things that he's kind of clamored about for the last, 6 years or so. It was really refreshing to hear him kind of pivot back to that, and obviously in stark contrast to Joe Biden, who can, really rarely get out a clean, coherent point. But yeah, I think the fact that there is nobody besides Bernie Sanders that could really win. I don't think even with massive thumbs on the scale, you're not getting Pete Buttigieg, to 40% of the Democratic Party getting behind him. You're not getting, Amy Klobuchar or Kamala Harris to, those kinds of numbers that you could feasibly see Bernie Sanders getting to 40-45%, even, if he's shy of the clear majority. And we could talk about, the way they've still, implemented superdelegates and all of that. But yeah, it seems to me that Bernie is almost playing his cards close to the chest, because I feel like if he let it out of the bag that he was running, then there's absolutely zero chance that Joe Biden doesn't run for president again.
Possible.
I think that he would not challenge Biden.
But if he decides not to run, Bernie going to get into the race?
It's an interesting question. And I think perhaps even the more interesting question is how excited as the left's going to be about it. I think a lot of people are so despairing about the opportunities for an alternative leftist candidate that they're willing to like just forgive Bernie for a whole host of sins, including what they feel like was him dropping out of the primary too early without getting sufficient concessions for the left, et cetera, or even really nailing Biden on the things that he said he was going to do, like support a $15 minimum wage, which is long overdue. At the same time, there's another part of the left which has learned its lesson from Bernie's 2 runs, is no longer that confident that electoralism is going to be the path to broad policy victories for the left. They see the way the left has mobilized with, precision against left candidates in primaries and has basically, formalized and perfected its ability to keep new squad members from getting into Congress. And they're like, I don't want to play this game anymore. Moreover, they see Bernie still using the kind of language that many folks attribute to his loss to in 2020 about how Biden is my friend, he's a great guy, he's doing a great job. And they question whether he has the, real dogged attitude that's required to actually distinguish him from either Biden or whatever other neoliberal centrist candidate, Buttigieg, Harris, might run.
I guess I would have a different view than people saying that. I mean, but obviously Bernie's politics are not my own, so this is pure like political prognostication, which, take it or leave it. But I would think there's a very good avenue for Bernie if Biden doesn't run, because the other candidates are so unpopular. Kamala Harris, Mayor Pete, and I guess Gavin Newsom leading the pack. These people are not popular at all.
No.
And also they're kind of in this neoliberal, progressive, but more progressive on kind of the culture stuff that is actually very toxic, and then not, far left enough for many of the kind of people that like Bernie, working people, et cetera. And they're all indistinguishable from each other in that vein. I mean, Bernie absolutely would have won the Democratic nomination if not for the presence of the popular former vice president of the country. And he still gave him a run for his money. So
and the Democratic Party. I mean, this is reported. This isn't conspiracy theory. Barack Obama picking up the phone and having all of the moderates drop out so that there could be a consolidation behind Biden. Because let's not forget, Biden lost the first 3 primaries badly. I came in like 4th and 5th place in these states.
But we should all stop caring what Iowa thinks. Like, it's very dumb. It doesn't matter.
I mean, sure, but because we do care, it does become a litmus test because of the investments that are put into Iowa, and it does prove something.
By the way, speaking of the Iowa caucus, do you remember just what an absolute clusterfuck that night was when it looked like Bernie was going to win, but then the shadow app glitched out and it was like Pete Buttigieg declared victory? What an absolute nightmare. I swear to God, I have PTSD from that night.
Oh, dude, I remember. See, this was back when it was the Vanguard blog, and Gavin hastily gets to his computer to write an article with the headline, "An Abortion of Democracy, the Iowa Caucus." And I was like, oh, geez, here we go. Obviously, I agreed with you. But I remember editing that piece and being like, Gavin's heated tonight. No, obviously, he was cheated massively. That's the only way that they were able to make it look like they were so desperate to make Pete Buttigieg like the first winner of the first caucus that they fucked it up so much. And there was obviously a bunch of DNC insider money involved in the same money that produced the shadow app. It was all horseshit. There were people and even people that, were inside like more establishment camps that were not like the Democratic favorites. Like, I know there was a lot of people involved in the Elizabeth Warren camp were like, what the fuck is going on with all this Pete Buttigieg shadow app shit? Because obviously the establishment, Elizabeth Warren wasn't their first choice either in Iowa. They wanted somebody like Pete or, Kamala, or somebody that was going to do just absolute downright neoliberalism. And anyway, so it's been confirmed across multiple camps. It's not just like a bunch of Bernie people being like, they robbed it from us. There was like a lot of confirmation there. But I do think it's worth unpacking this kind of discussion that's being had right here, right now, between Briahna and Robbie, because I think I found myself as the perfect, it's like watching a fucking tennis match, because I kind of find myself like Robbie and I have absolutely no political common ground, almost absolutely no political common ground from all of the time I've listened to the guy. But I really agreed with what he was saying here, which is the fact that, hey, I know that there is a online subsect of the left and even a lot of like regular average Joe supporters that feel burned and scorned by Bernie Sanders. But I also see that there's a lot of people who don't feel that way, and Bernie Sanders is like by a football field way more popular than any of the other non-Joe Biden presidential options. And there's really just this And I see that, but then I also, obviously, I felt all of the frustration that Briahna is articulating, the fact that Bernie Sanders wasn't cutthroat enough, the fact that, he was always constantly willing to bow to the knee of Joe Biden and the Democratic establishment and, oh, my good friend Joe, and all these kinds of things. But what I just really struggle with on the other side of that, is this, what are the other options, right? Like, she really frames it like, oh, well, the people on the left who have learned their lesson, they're going to do it this other way, and the ROI on that other way has been a goose egg, right? Like, we really haven't accomplished much, like, from the third party. Gavin and I have constantly pointed out on our show that despite the fact that we had Howie Hawkins on, we had Angela Walker on, they were the first guests that we ever had on the Vanguard. Absolutely not opposed to third parties. I think that, she's like, people are so convinced that it's not going to work. I'm like, well, they haven't ever been really given a reason to believe that it will work, right? Like the framework that's been made. So it's either like we're going full on anarcho-syndicalism, like fuck electoral politics, we only believe in mutual aid. And to me, that doesn't sound like socialism anymore, that I understand it, right? I think the idea is that we should force the state to give us these things and not just like abandon the state and be like, oh, we're just going to do this all on our own, because obviously that's just not going to have the kind of rigor and the thoroughness to be popular in a democracy, right? That's how they always constantly defeat these things. We talked about it in a different episode not long ago when Jank was going on like his like little like spat with his debate with Olayemi, and we were talking about how first they kind of just made the oh, we're going to do the like community model for mental health care, and then they just completely defunded it, and that made it like super unpopular, and that made it so that the people were like clamoring for this like right-wing fascistic kind of thing. So I always get super sus when you're going that route. The other route is, oh, okay, we're just going to run our third party candidate, and it's like, that's fine and that's virtuous, and I might even vote for that person if whoever ends up with the Democratic Party sucks really bad. But I also just think that we haven't seen any kind of movement, any kind of groundswell, any kind of organization or formation behind any kind of candidate. The only candidates I hear buzzes about are people like Marianne Williamson, who already got on the debate stage, already got exposed to a massive audience, and just never really took off. She was no more popular than somebody like Amy Klobuchar. She was no more popular than any of these like middling, couldn't break out of the fucking pack candidates. And that's not to say that I don't like Marianne more than I like these other people, but she didn't demonstrate that catapult of success that when people met or people first came to understand Bernie Sanders, that they felt 2016, he was a meteoric rise. And it's because he had this long record. I'm looking around. There's nobody else with that record. So I would love to have Bree back on to talk about this because I would love to know, like, obviously she probably has some plan in her brain for how she thinks that this should go. But to me, it just seems like you can only play the cards that you have dealt to you, right? And I feel like if we get Bernie Sanders dealt in open run, then yeah, I would say, you know what? Based in the face of like terrible opportunities, I won't go in with the same amount of hope at all. I'll be much more skeptical, and maybe everybody else will be too. But I think one of the things that Bernie Sanders was capable of is he was kind of uniting us and rallying us around like our common goals, and instead of like being ultra like fractured as the left. And I think that's a net benefit for us. And you know what? Maybe I'm a sucker, maybe I'm a mark, but I would get behind that again in theory.
Yeah, no, I kind of feel the same way. And yeah, I agree with basically everything that Briahna said as far as her criticisms of Bernie Sanders go. I agree with a lot of the criticisms of the anti-electoral movement in general, saying like, electoralism might not be the way we're going to get a lot of these goals accomplished. We need to be pressuring whoever is in office, regardless of who they are. And, that's going to come from activists on the ground and labor movements and all that stuff. And that's all true. I agree with all of that. But it's also true that the electoral process, the election, the primary is all going to happen regardless of whether or not we participate in it. It's not like that's going to go away because we decide that we're above it. That's still going to happen. So, knowing that and acknowledging the fact that it is still going to happen, regardless of what Zac and myself and Briahna Joy Gray think about it. Yeah, would I rather there be at least one guy up on that debate stage that's more in line with my progressive values and my socialist values than fucking Gavin Newsom and fucking Pete Buttigieg? Yeah, you bet your goddamn ass that I want someone up there. And if it has to be Bernie fucking Sanders going for it for the third time, then again, that's better than freaking Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg and Gavin Newsom and all these like caricatures of neoliberalism. So yeah, I mean, that's my stance. Is he perfect? No. Do the anti-electoralists have a lot of good points? Yes. But is the primary still going to happen regardless of whatever the fuck I have to say about it? 100% it is. And would I prefer to have someone to root for? Yeah, I would.
Yep, 100%. We can play this out.
Also, thank you so much, Comrade, for the $5. I really appreciate that. Unfortunately, on my lunch break and can't stay long, here's to a good show. Well, thank you so much, Comrade, for the super chat. That's really generous of you. And I hope that you enjoyed what you caught of it.
Yeah, thanks, comrade.
Thanks so much. And also thank you, Ariana, for the $5. Even though he's broken my heart before, I will always show up for Bernie. I don't see a clear successor to the movement anyhow. Better to have him in the mix. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at too, Ariana. Unfortunately, there's not a clear successor to the movement, which is something that maybe should have been better considered by Bernie earlier on, like who to set up as the next in line, because it doesn't really seem like there's an obvious choice. I don't think it's going to be AOC or anything like that. So yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Better to have at least one progressive, one socialist-minded candidate in the mix rather than just a literal cesspool of establishment neoliberals. I think that's preferable. But really appreciate the $5 and thanks for sharing your perspective, Ariana.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm waiting for somebody to be like, no, let's not go with Bernie. Let's go with this guy. This guy's got a way better record. He hasn't disappointed us. Let's go with this person. I should say, I don't care who the fuck they are. Let's go with this person. They have proven themselves. They have done this. They have the name recognition. They have the crowd control mechanisms. They have the infrastructure. I'm waiting for anybody to announce that person to me, because then I would be like, you know what? You're right. This person hasn't massively disappointed us. This person hasn't fucked up terribly a bunch of times. Let's go with them. But I don't hear any names. I hear a lot of, oh, well, we can't do that, or you're an idiot, or the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. I hear all of that shit. And occasionally I'll hear the like, oh, well, Cornel West and Chris Hedges should run. It's like, okay, we're trying to be rooted in reality here. Okay, I'm trying to assess the situation as it is. And the fact of the matter is like there's nobody else that's presented themselves as an even potentially willing candidate outside of Marianne Williamson. And I'm sorry, we just saw how that went. You want to talk about how we saw how things went already? We saw how that went already. It wasn't even close. So if I'm like putting my money in there, it's like, I just see that this is a better vehicle for my ideas. And then if he loses again, then, where are we worse off than we were before?
Absolutely. Thank you also, Mari Pozo. Really appreciate the $9.99. Here's where I'm at. 1, there's already a Bernie-shaped hole in the minds of many Americans. 2, Bernie won the first 3 Democratic primaries plus California. He needs to stop being nice to Biden types, but here we are. Yeah, that's true. And obviously, if in the scenario where Bernie Sanders does run again, which let's be clear is fairly unlikely. I think that Biden probably will seek re-election, unfortunately, but let's say he doesn't and Bernie does run again. Well, it is true that he'll be up against candidates that he doesn't have that same sort of like personal relationship or friendship to. I guess him and Biden got along well when they were both in the Senate and, they were chumming it up and Biden was always really nice to Bernie and all that stuff. So that kind of clouded Bernie's judgment. It prevented him from being able to really, take the knives out and just go all out against Biden. If he's running against Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg and Gavin Newsom and all these fools, I think he'll have probably a much easier time going for the jugular, so to speak, just given, again, that these people are literal caricatures of neoliberalism. So is Biden, to be fair. But again, he doesn't have that personal connection with a guy like Kamala Harris or a guy like Gavin Newsom, for example. So I think it might be easier for him to go for the jugular. But again, obviously that is, Bernie's biggest weakness is the fact that he's so goddamn nice. He's too civil. He doesn't want to get in the gutter at all.
Yeah, and look, obviously we talk about this. I like to quote Hunter Thompson where, he talks about the thing that Jimmy Carter had was like a real functional meanness, and that's how he became president. And I think that Bernie Sanders, to his credit or fault, depending on how you look at it, he just doesn't have that bone for real functional meanness. Like, you are standing in my way and I will do everything to get you out of my fucking way to achieve this goal. I just don't think he has that killer instinct. I don't think it's a part of him. I think it's part of why he has the socialist value set that he has. I think it's why he's been able to sustain himself in the swamp of Washington so long and so rigidly. And all of those things are just a part of who Bernie Sanders is in reality. Of course, he needs to stop being nice to Biden types. Of course, he needs to more clearly than ever differentiate how he would separate himself from the rule of the Democratic Party. And while I'm saying that he's the best option, I wouldn't go so far as to call it a good option. I wouldn't call it a good option. I would say that it's the best option that we have presented to us, because I would say that there's like 90% chance that we just run the same deck of cards again and Bernie fucks it all up and I'm pissed off and pulling my hair out. But 10% is better than 0. So that's where my analysis is really coming in.
Yeah, totally agreed. And yeah, obviously we're not idolizing politicians at all. I'm not trying to idolize Bernie Sanders whatsoever. But I think Zach said it best. Given the cards that are currently dealt, if that's the situation, that he probably is the best we have, at least for a Democratic primary. And again, I've always been clear about it. If the progressive, the socialist candidate gets fucked over in the Democratic primary, then they should absolutely then declare a third party run and say, well, you screwed me over. I'm going to continue the challenge. Now I'm going to run as the Green Party candidate and, continue to be a thorn in the side of the establishment. That's my preferred strategy. And I hope that whoever it is, whether it's Bernie or a different progressive, employs that strategy. I'm not hopeful, but, that would be my ideal situation. So, that's fair to say. Also, thank you, Jerk Dad Ass, for the $9.99. Really appreciate it. I think it's BS that Bernie doesn't come on independent media. Ask Briahna about getting Bernie on comment on RBN, and she shrugged her shoulders. Bernie shouldn't be allowed if he doesn't engage with independent media. That's actually a pretty fair point, Jerk Dad Ass. I do really wish that Bernie would engage more with independent media. He seems like he's not super fond of getting asked tough questions by progressives, so that is unfortunate. I won't deny that. And that's something that I think Trump is better at. He will go on just like random podcasts and do stuff like that. Now, admittedly, he's not currently serving in the United States Senate, so he probably has more time on his hands to do shit like that. But that being said, you're not wrong, Jerk Deadass.
Yeah, look, it's one of the things that I actually do admire about Ro Khanna, right? Ro Khanna, to all of his faults, and there are ample of them to fucking pick through, he will go on fucking progressive media. He will go on and he'll take those tough questions and he'll be respectful to you and he'll be like, well, with all due respect, this is how I see the vision going down, and this is what we're working very hard to do back here, and it is a struggle, and of course we don't get everything we want, and he'll give you that fucking BS to your face, which I guess in some way is admirable, right? Because he is representing us. And yeah, of course Bernie Sanders should do that. I remember we made a video like a year ago about how it was bullshit that fucking Bernie went on Krystal and Kyle and friends without fucking Kyle there. I mean, I would have burned the Vanguard to the fucking ground before I let Bernie come down here and not talk to me and be like, oh, that guy's gonna ask me something tough. I'd be like, fuck you, so I mean, I was really mad for Kyle about that, especially after all the support that Bernie had showed Kyle over the years. So that was very, very not a good thing. And I hate to be in the position where I'm simping for Bernie Sanders because I fucking criticized the guy so much. But the thing is, I'm not telling anybody that this is a good option. We are on the left. We have no good options. Good options don't exist for us, okay? We're constantly fighting from behind. So what we can do is we can pick our least worst option, right? And I think our least worst option, as it's presented to us right now at the card table, I'm saying, look, my best value bet is for Bernie Sanders, because otherwise I have to like fucking, I don't know what you do. I literally don't know what the other option is. It's like people want to not participate. I don't know. They want to run somebody that nobody's ever heard of and would be impossible to get to the fucking, into the public lexicon without a massive movement behind them for a third party. I'm down for that. I just don't see the groundwork for it. So yeah, I mean, this is all fair and justified criticism of Bernie Sanders. I'm not here to like dispute it.
Yeah. Plus, even if Bernie ran in the primary, got totally starched, as many people predict that he would, or even if he just, completely lost to the establishment candidate, a third party candidate can still run. A progressive losing in the primary does not negate the possibility of a third party candidate running in the general. That's how it's always happened. So yeah, I don't see how those are mutually exclusive. But anyway, thank you also to Blues Guy. Really appreciate that. $5. Okay, VP, Fetterman, Ventura, Katie Porter. Those are all pretty good choices. Unfortunately, Jesse Ventura would never accept the VP of well, maybe he would. Who knows? I know he wasn't big on Bernie because Bernie refused to run as an independent or a third party candidate. But he definitely might accept a VP spot. Who knows? I definitely like Katie Porter too. She's one of the better members of the House. And, Fetterman obviously has a lot of strong policies too, despite his weaknesses on foreign policy. So I do like Fetterman, despite, again, some serious disagreements. I think he could definitely make for a good kind of like attack dog VP. Clearly, he's proven that he has the ability to really go for the jugular in the way that Bernie Sanders never did, which is one thing I prefer about him. But yeah, interesting options. Do you have anyone in mind for a potential VP pick, Zach?
Look, the thing about Fetterman, I hope he gets well fully, all the way so that he's able to debate and vociferously like articulate all of his, positions, because that guy's, unfortunately, that's just a reality of running for vice president. Like, the man suffered a massive stroke. He's going to really need to get his strength back up to run. He has some really dog shit takes on Israel. Unfortunately, so does Bernie Sanders. So we're just going to have to set that, that's got to be part of the conversation, right? Okay, so we go for Bernie Sanders. We have to do a lot of marching in the street about how this would be unacceptable for him to do if he's president. Fetterman kind of adds a youthful jovialness to it. He understands meme culture. He's very online. All the things that I think Bernie Sanders really suffers with. He's, polite, but he's direct and he's forceful and he's uncompromising in a way that I think Bernie Sanders would benefit from. He has a large stature, right? A nice juxtaposition to, the more feeble old man thing that they would try and stick on Bernie Sanders as being like a short, 81-year-old, I believe is how old he is right now. So anyway, I like the idea of Fetterman. Ventura would never, ever do anything in the Democratic Party as far as I'm concerned. I mean, he was still like genuinely angry when, I don't know if this is on air or off air, but he was looking at me and Gavin talking about how I marched up to Bernie Sanders and he said that he would support Hillary Clinton. And I said, you're not an independent. And I'm like, well, that's fucking fair call out, Jesse. But yeah, he was like, I'm done with this guy. I left. And I was like, oh, damn, Jesse, you fucking have a better litmus test than me. Yeah, so there's that just doesn't happen in my book as a potential reality. And I don't see Bernie going with somebody like Katie Porter. We never got to see who Bernie would have made his VP. To be honest, I think he might have done some stupid shit like picking Elizabeth Warren, even though she betrayed him a bunch of times. So I honestly, I don't. So it's like, you want to say, Bernie, you guys have to realize that you have to deal with all of Bernie's judgments, which is why I'm not trying to be unfair to Briahna, even though I slightly disagree with her here. Like, all the points she's saying are true. I'm just saying, like, what's the alternative, right? And do all of these criticisms make enough for me to, abandon this ship and go to the other ship as a neutral, observer over here, trying to, articulate more of the like Midwestern perspective. Do I think people would still get on board with Bernie Sanders? Yeah. If I go into my fucking bar and I talk to anybody under the age of 30 about politics, I live in Kansas City, Missouri, and I will get a lot of positive responses about Bernie Sanders. Bring up Pete Buttigieg and people are like, what? Huh? Who? The gay guy? Like, that's what they think. That's what they say. So I'm just Marianne Williamson. Who the fuck is that? The crazy lady that said fucking eat hot chip, masturbate, and lie. Like, that was the crazy tweet lady. That's what people think. I'm being honest about what people think on the ground here. Okay. No shade to Marianne Williamson. She's very lovely. We've chatted with her. But I'm just telling you people's perception. So all I'm saying is that, we really aren't coming out. We have no good options is all I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, I've always been honest on this show. I love the horse race, and I want a horse to root for in the horse race. And Bernie would give me that option. So that's all I'm saying. But thank you so much for the super chat to Blues Guy. Thank you also, Mariposa, for the $4.99. I literally still have my Billionaires Can't Buy Bernie bumper sticker from 2016 on my car. Yeah, I still have my Bernie T-shirt from 2016. Mariposa really brings back those good memories when there is still a real sense of hope and optimism among the progressive movement in this country, which has since disappeared, which again is another reason why I think it would be worth it for Bernie to run, even if he doesn't win. I mean, just to bring back that sense of optimism and to bring back that sense of movement around these issues like Medicare for All, which again has completely disappeared from the conversation since Bernie dropped out. If you have a political vehicle in Bernie Sanders or another candidate to represent those ideas and to advocate for them, there's a lot more energy around them because people feel that they are possible. They feel more tangible if someone's actually running for president on that platform versus just like, oh, let's pressure Biden to do it, even though he clearly never will. So, I think that's another valid reason to support Bernie if he decided to run again. But thank you so much, Mariposa. We really appreciate the super chats today.
Yeah, I took my Bernie sticker off my car, so I don't know. What does that say about me?
Sell out. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you so much, Mariposa, though. Really appreciate that. And thank you also, Mike, for the $2. Where does Biden rank among post-FDR presidents? Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, I haven't really I'd have to really look at all of their achievements and try to, parse out because you think about a guy like LBJ, right? LBJ did some great stuff domestically, like genuinely one of the best presidents we've ever had when it comes to domestic policy. But you can't overlook the fucking Vietnam War either. So it's like it's hard to rank them because again, it's like some of them have done really good things in domestic arenas, but then horrible like genocide on the world stage. So it's like, how do you even go about ranking those people? I'd have to think about that a little bit more, Mike. Do you have an answer to that one, Zach?
Yeah, I think unfortunately I have to put him definitely in the top half because of just how little harm he's really done. He hasn't done anything good, man, at all. And he hasn't done anything that's all that bad either. Like, obviously he's done some bad things, but those are all par for the course for US president. So really quickly, we're talking like post FDR. So then you've got like Eisenhower on to present. Right. No. Sorry. Truman on to present. Excuse me. But so Truman inherits office as president. He's World War II, Eisenhower, racism, all the way up until, then you have Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter's probably in the top half. But he also did a lot of bad shit, and he wasn't that effective, and the people didn't like him that much. And also everything that happened in Indonesia under his watch, I'm sus about. So then you move on into like the late 70s and 80s when you've got Reagan and Reaganomics, and then you've got George Herbert Walker, and then you get Slick Willie in there, and then it's George W. Bush, and obviously he's a fucking dumbass and probably maybe our worst president ever, one of our single most destructive presidents of all time, and definitely worse than Donald Trump. I will say that loud and proudly, even though I think that Donald Trump is also a fucking terrible president. So yeah, is it fair to say also we've got Obama? I fucking skipped him. I think Joe Biden will go down as I don't know. It's tough. He won't go down as memorable as a president as Obama, no chance. But he might go down as less destructive. I think he's definitely caused less harm. I think Kyle's been like claiming that take recently, like Biden's going to be better than Obama or less harmful. I think that's probably by the numbers true. Most likely because I don't think Biden's going to get reelected in any capacity, so only have 4 years to do shit. So yeah, I don't know. That's just how I would think about that. But that's a long-winded answer.
Yeah, no, that's true. And let's be honest, if Obama had just been a white dude, he would have been like the most unmemorable president of all time. Like he would have been instantly forgotten in the history books. The only thing people will remember about Obama is unfortunately the fact that he was the first black president. And I think Biden's more along the lines of a Jimmy Carter. As Mike says here, Carter's failures led to Reagan. Well, Biden's failures will probably lead to Trump or DeSantis. So, we might have some history replaying itself in the near future. Thank you so much for this.
I would also say, though, that there are a lot of elements. What I was more referencing, though, about Obama was there were a lot of elements of history that were like integral to how he responded. The 2008 financial collapse, the Obamacare battles, the fucking way that he handled the entire drone wars, the Edward Snowden, the fucking all of these kinds of things that were happening under the Obama administration, the fucking, Occupy Wall Street. Like, I don't know. I just feel like there was a lot more memorable things going on that he handled really badly than Joe Biden did as well.
Sure. Well, I'm just saying, like, he didn't do anything transformational. He didn't address any like foundational issues in responding to those crises. He basically just took the neoliberal approach every single time, which is why he's such an unmemorable president. It's not like Obamacare, what a historic piece of legislation.
But what president after FDR was memorable, if that's your
LBJ?
criteria?
He did like Social Security and stuff. Like he did like the Civil Rights Act, like sweeping actual reforms.
But that's not the only president people are going to remember. I mean, it's not like fucking, I mean, you know what I mean? It's not like Reagan was an unmemorable president because he didn't fucking do anything good for the American people. He's an extremely memorable president because he fucked up so badly at every term. And he led to the fucking later bankruptcy that we would experience. And then you had, all these different kinds of things. So I mean, I guess that's true. But I just think that a guy like fucking Bill Clinton is a pretty memorable president, not because of NAFTA and all the fucking bullshit, but because of the blowjob in the Oval Office kind of a deal. That's how Americans' memory work. I just think all those moments are going to be seared in people's minds from the Obama years that he just felt like he was president forever. Like Joe Biden's going to leave office and it's going to be like, that was quick. Obama, maybe it was my age. I don't know. Obama just felt like he was president forever.
Yeah, that's true. And I've actually said in the past that I think Obama is the Democratic Reagan, 100%. So I think that's a valid comparison. Like he didn't do anything good for the country, but for whatever reason, the base of his party still idolizes him and acts like he's like fucking God's gift to the universe and the greatest president of all time. Like straight up, in the same way that older Republican voters love Reagan and like worship Ronald Reagan, the same thing goes with Obama among Democratic voters. Like you ask, just your average like Democratic voter, usually like in the older age range, and they will for the most part tell you that Obama was the best president of their lifetime and they freaking loved him. So yeah, I think it's absolutely fair to say that he was the Democratic version of Reagan, but I still think if he had been a white dude that no one would have cared at all about him.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, yeah, who knows? Who knows? But anyway, we can finish this up.
Yeah, let's finish this up real quick because we do have a few other stories we wanted to get to today.
The votes in Iowa, correct?
Well, that's true, but that's also a little bit of Pete Buttigieg's fault. LOL. I won't take us back to that time. But one other part of this Bernie story is to note that he has gotten a little bit of a feather in his cap, winning the battle over whether or not this permitting bill that many people thought was a giveaway to oil companies, and which was this like side deal that Democrats had agreed to, that Schumer had agreed to with Joe Manchin in order to pass the Inflation Reduction Act. You know, the Democrats were going to tank government funding over this and create a government shutdown if Bernie didn't hold the line, and also Tim Kaine didn't hold the line.
Who?
And leave Tim Kaine alone, just because it was forgettable vice presidential candidate in American history.
Okay,
He did do something good here. For whatever reason, he stood with Bernie on this. And I did a radar last week asking whether or not they were going to hold the line or whether they're going to bend the knee like progressives so often do, arguing, oh, getting something is better than getting nothing. Okay, fine, we'll pass your bill that allow the Mountain Valley Pipeline to open and put the equivalent of 19 million more cars on the road. At the same time, we're singing the climate praises of the Inflation Reduction Act. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I'm pleasantly surprised to see that Bernie showed a little chutzpah here. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's still the standard bearer for actual, genuine, progressive people. Like, there's no one else. There's no one. Even the other people who are that far left in a political sense are sort of your AOC type people. Your squad members are kind of perceived as being, you know, they've leaned in the kind of cultural, woke skull type stuff, which is Bernie, and Bernie alone has avoided that pitfall, which makes him really an asset and one that should not be retired until he absolutely has to be, because there's no other choice, is what I would say.
Let's Chomsky Bernie, keep him going until he's 90.
And that's so true, by the way, about how Bernie has really like avoided kind of getting embroiled in the whole like, you know, identity politics, or like what people would consider to be like woke scolding. Like, you guys remember that that article profile of AOC in the GQ magazine, and like the whole freaking article, she was complaining about her personal victimhood and how, you know, like she feared for her life and all of her personal struggles, which are fine, like a valid. I'm not denying that those are real concerns for her. But Bernie would never respond that way to if he got a profile by GQ, the entire goddamn thing would be about policy, about his vision for the country, about what working class Americans need, about the policies that the Democratic Party should embrace, about the labor movement in this country. There wouldn't be a goddamn word about, oh, like I'm such a victim and I'm, you know, the hero of this story and this is all my narcissistic freaking, you know, quest to get more attention, all that stuff that people do associate with someone like AOC. And that's a great point from Robbie. It's like Bernie's not embroiled in that. You can still ask just your average American, like you said, Zach, just average people from Kansas City at the bar, bring up Bernie Sanders, and they'll say, oh yeah, he's that one honest guy, you know, the one politician who I actually trust and who seems like his heart is in the right place, even if I disagree with him on X, Y, and Z issues. So very, very true. Good point by Robbie. There is no standard bearer for the progressive movement that has kind of usurped Bernie, at least not right now.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing I wanted to add about how Bernie hasn't fallen victim to this bullshit is that, to his credit, he's pretty unmoved by like the way that the like tides of whatever is like, you know, like he's unmoved by the zeitgeist, right? Like the shift in culture and all that. He's like, no, he's the same Bernie Sanders. And I feel like that's really juxtaposed with the squad, who, you know, they're always ready to like make their like slay queen argument, but sometimes that actually like helps them, like they miss the forest from the trees. We were just talking about how Cenk was, you know, attributing Ilhan Omar's almost loss to the fact that, you know, she didn't, or that she supported defunding the police and, you know, abolishing the police or whatever the fuck crazy shit he said. Like a week later, as a result of that, Ilhan teams up with Pramila Jayapal to pass this like fucking police budget bill through the House, and her name's on it, and Pramila Jayapal's name's on it. Thank God AOC and Cori Bush and you know, the rest of the squad, Jamal Bowman, they had the sense not to fucking vote for this shit. They convinced Ayanna Pressley to vote present, which is how you know that they basically just like fucking acquiesced to it. But Ilhan actually fucking says, yes, I am doing this, because she's so afraid of being vilified as somebody who wants to defund the police. In a I don't know, in a way that's kind of a letdown. And Bernie Sanders is not one that's like above being manipulated. I don't want to portray it that way, but if this bill goes to the Senate, I know Bernie's not going to vote for it, just like he didn't vote for the CHIPS Act, just like he didn't vote for, the bills that clearly fucking contradict his principles. He's weak sauce on the debate stage. He's weak sauce when it comes to calling people your friend, but he doesn't usually vote for bullshit. There are infractions on his record, but they're really slim because he's really fucking good when it comes to the policy, and that's goes back to what you said. 100% GQ would never run a fucking feature on Bernie Sanders because it would be all about policy, baby. It would be all about how horrible it is for the working class right now. Not about Bernie Sanders. Bernie thinks he's doing great. He's got 2 fucking houses. He's fine. All right, he's living a great life. He's going to be able to leave some wealth behind for his family, so he doesn't have to worry about them. He's out here fucking fighting for the working class people. AOC has the same fucking deal, but she wants you to know that, somebody hurt her feelings on Twitter. Like, who are you going to fucking vote for and show up for? Like, the American people know.
Yep. And ultimately, again, what this comes down to for me is like, whether we like it or not, there's going to be a primary. Well, hopefully, assuming that Biden does not seek re-election, which I think it's like probably 60-40, who knows. But again, there's going to be an electoral process, whether or not we like it, regardless of how disengaged the progressive movement is from it, it's going to happen. And again, do I want a horse to bet on in the horse race? You damn fucking sure I do. I absolutely want a fucking horse to bet on in the horse race. You think I want to sit here and cover fucking Gavin Newsom versus Kamala Harris versus Pete Buttigieg? You know how freaking boring that'll make my job? No, it's going to be way more exciting if there's someone like Bernie Sanders in there. And you can say that's a stupid reason to want him to run, but it's a reason.
I wouldn't even say it's a stupid reason. Look, guys, like, yeah, it's more fun for Gavin, but it's also better for all of our fucking ideas to be out here in the fucking battleground, right? Like, let's not let the Overton window be dragged fucking kicking and screaming back to, now you think that if there's no Bernie Sanders on stage, Pete Buttigieg is going to give a fucking shit about Medicare for all who want it? No, he's not going to be saying anything like that. He's going to be talking, what we need to do as a nation is strengthen Obamacare so that it's taking care of our single mothers and those people that desperately need a little help on the fringes. And he's going to try and do his like fake rat-faced Obama impression in front of all of us and just like reparrot all those ideas that haven't worked and more neoliberalism. Like, no, it's not going to be like, why don't we think of a vision for Medicare for anybody who wants it? Like, because he doesn't have to battle with that framing. So you could be like, it's stupid. Bernie's not going to win. I'm going to be like, I don't fucking care. Remember when we were all stoked about Mike Gravel getting on the debate stage? That guy was never going to win. They would have shot a bullet through his fucking head before they let that guy become president. Just like, I'm just being real. That's how you know you're a real one. They won't even let you become president because you're going to start freeing people and leaking documents and then you have to go. So why did I want Mike Gravel on there? Why did I buy his Pentagon rolling papers? Why did I send the man $10 on like a monthly fucking... Why did I do that? Because I wanted to see his ass on the debate stage raising a fucking ruckus at all of these people, talking about how if he was president, we're immediately getting the fuck out of the Middle East. Now we're taking that military budget, we're cutting it in half, and we're reinvesting in the American people. And you can say, look, that's suicide. You can't run on cutting the military's budget in American politics. Gravel didn't give a fuck. He wasn't running for president. He was running for the debate stage, and he wanted to get on there, and he kept fucking meeting the criteria, and then they would steal it away from him. But a guy like Bernie Sanders, he's got way more clout than Mike Gravel. Mike Gravel hadn't been a senator in fucking 100 years when he ran for president in 2016. So they can't keep Bernie off the stage as easily, right? So again, don't send your money to him. You don't fucking have to. Bernie doesn't owe you. You don't owe Bernie your fucking money. You're not any less of a progressive if you don't get, if you don't. But if it comes down to it and it's fucking Democratic primary event, fucking cast the vote for the guy. Jesus Christ. It doesn't seem like it's that hard. I just don't understand that like show up and fucking vote if it comes down to it. That's all I would say. That's the bare minimum any of us can fucking do. I'm gonna vote in my mayor race in Kansas City, and I don't like any of the fuckers that are up for election.
Yeah, and if he doesn't win, if he gets screwed over again, then freaking vote for the third party in the general. Like, that's what I do. I was a proud Bernie supporter 2016, 2020. Guess what? They fucked him over. Then I cast my vote for Jill Stein, and then I cast my vote for Howie Hawkins. And I talked about them and advocated for them, and big fan of the Green Party, et cetera, et cetera. Like, these things are not mutually exclusive. So that would be my general response to those people as well. But I think that's probably all we have to say about Bernie 2024. Again, I'm hoping it happens just so we have something interesting, something positive to cover here other than freaking Pete Buttigieg and Kamala Harris warring it out for the, Democratic nomination. That would be a real bummer. But yeah, did you also want to talk a little bit about Glenn Greenwald's recent appearance on Breaking Points with Krystal and Saagar, talking a bit about his old friend Ed Snowden?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Glenn is probably I don't think there's a single better source on earth to talk to about these kinds of issues. We've been really grateful to have Glenn on our show in the past. I think he does I mean, this is personal for him, right? I mean, Glenn Greenwald has Edward Snowden as his literal source. So the fact that this dude lives in exile, I don't imagine like weighs lightly on his conscience, right? Like obviously Ed Snowden was a sovereign man. He knew what the fuck he was getting into, but you've collaborated with this guy. You really feel his like, the shit that he goes through, because I mean, I imagine they have some sort of like friendly personal collection as a result of going through all of this craziness, as two people who were involved in it. So it's all personal for him. He's never going to just like forget about this as an issue. He's never just going to like stop talking about Ed Snowden. It's one of the things that I find, really remarkably respectable about Glenn. This is a guy that really values the relationship between journalism and source. And so I thought that he does a great job breaking this down, focusing on why this issue is important and talking about how there's been a lot of bullshit framing around it. So yeah, I just thought this was good clip to react to. If you had anything to add before we rock and roll.
Yeah, not really. This is an interesting conversation. Saw a lot of deranged liberals responding to Glenn Greenwald Edward Snowden getting citizenship in Russia, saying that he was like a Russian op and all this crazy nonsense. So yeah, I'm excited to break this down and hear from Glenn Greenwald, who is a friend of the show.
Joining us now is great friend, very special friend, the original friend, perhaps the best friend of the show, Glenn Greenwald. It's great to see you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I accept all of those titles. I think they're all appropriate, and I appreciate the invitation.
It's nice to see your face and be the subject of your mockery again, Glenn. Always
That's right.
a pleasure.
It's been far too long. One of the reasons we want to talk to you, Glenn, on top of just checking in general, let's put this up there on the screen. President Putin yesterday granted Russian citizenship to Edward Snowden. Now, there's been a lot made of this by the U.S. media as some evidence that Snowden himself is like further a traitor, as if he himself should be pushed to the front line by Putin. What did you make of this move, and then the general treatment by the Western media of this obvious stunt by Putin?
So first of all, just look at the framing of this. Like, Putin grants citizenship to Snowden. This happens all the time whenever the U.S. media wants you to hate a particular country. They start personalizing everything to the leader. When we wanted to invade Iraq, it ceased being Iraq did this, Iraq did that. Everything was Saddam did this. Same with the war in Yugoslavia. It was no longer Serbia does this. It was Milosevic does this. They always personalize it on a particular leader, as though now Putin is sitting in the immigration office as an immigration clerk reviewing Snowden's application for citizenship and stamping it approved. Of course, it's done in the name of Putin. So many documents are signed by Joe Biden that he wouldn't have the capability to even read, let alone analyze and process. But that's already the framing. Snowden has lived in Russia for 9 years now. He lives there with his American wife and their 2 young toddlers. And the reason they're there, of course, is because the U.S. government has made clear that if he steps 1 inch outside of Russia, they will arrest him and prosecute him and imprison him for the rest of his life under the Espionage Act of 1917. So all this is the natural byproduct of living in a country for a long enough time. I've lived in Brazil 17 years. I'm eligible for citizenship with my family. And yet the American media tried to depict this as some cunning move on the part of Putin, and worse, some sinister evidence that it means Snowden all along was a Russian spy.
I want to pick back up on Snowden, but first I actually want to ask you more about that point about like personalizing the governments, because I think that's interesting because
yeah, so I just think that that's a really interesting, point that he's making here. Obviously, like, he connects it back to himself. He's lived in Brazil for 17 years. He's eligible for Brazilian, citizenship. Does that mean that he was, he originated as like a stooge for Lula da Silva, or he's like somehow like a journalist pawn for Jair Bolsonaro? I don't think so, right? I just think that the dude, happenstance. I mean, this is, the world we live in. People can travel. You plant roots wherever the fuck you want to. In Edward Snowden's case, where you have to avoid lifelong imprisonment by the United States government. So it is really funny, and not funny in like the real way, just like funny and like, that's kind of funny. Like they mandated that he fly in the plane that he was on, land in Russia, which was by no means Edward Snowden's first place to end up, or like preferred place to end up, right? He had other plans to go to an even more like, hospitable country to him to evade persecution from the United States. His plane's downed in Moscow. He's stuck in the airport for all this fucking time. And now Putin's like, yeah, you can stay here. We don't give a fuck. United States isn't going to come into Russia and come and get you back, which is totally true. He forges his life there. Eventually his girlfriend's able to join them. They start a family, yada, yada, yada. And now the same exact outlets that were chomping at the bit to publish all of the leaked data and information and government documents and the exposed secrets that people like Glenn Greenwald, but also publications like The Guardian and The Washington Post. They won Pulitzer Prizes for them, and now they want to turn right back around, completely shear down the story to make it look like he's some Putin-loving traitor. And it's just obviously with the heightened tension between the United States and Russia right now as a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, all these different kinds of things. It's just like they will not let this man have any peace.
I actually try to, when we're covering Russia, talk about the Kremlin or talk about Putin versus Russia as a whole, because when you're dealing with a basically authoritarian system, I sort of want to intentionally separate out the ordinary citizens who may or may not support what's going on or may not understand what's going on versus the leadership, like the elites who are actually, running the show. Do you think there's an argument for that? Or how do you see those things and the language there and its importance?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, Russia is an authoritarian and an autocratic regime. A lot of countries in the world are, but it's also a complex country of 70 million people or so. It has all kinds of different power centers and factions and competing interests. The same is true, of almost any country that you talk about, where there's this extremely exaggerated attempt to depict it as this totalitarian regime, when maybe North Korea and a handful of other small countries really are appropriately characterized that way. There's all kinds of interest in Russia. There's lots of divided public opinions. Putin does have a lot of support, as does the war in Ukraine. Maybe that's because of a propagandized media. Surely that is part of it. But I think it's just so overly simplified, the way that the Western media ends up talking about the countries that we're supposed to hate.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Very important.
I wanted to get your response to what Snowden himself tweeted in response. He said, after years of separation from our parents, my wife and I have no desire to be separated from our sons. After 2 years of waiting, nearly 10 years of exile, a little stability will make a difference for my family. I pray for privacy for them and for us all.
I mean, I think this is the key point, Krystal, is let's go back and just remember, because before this obsession with Russia completely consumed American discourse in 2014, every major media outlet fought to publish and report on the Snowden documents, and virtually every major media outlet throughout the West did so. Obviously, The Guardian and The Washington Post won a Pulitzer for it, but the New York Times fought for those documents. I remember getting badgered by all their reporters for access to the archive. Globo in Brazil, Le Monde in France, El Mundo in Spain, all over the Western world. People were competing to be able to report these documents because they revealed an incredibly newsworthy story, which was, especially here in the United States, many of the spying programs that were instituted under the War on Terror and then increased radically under the Obama administration were found by courts to be unconstitutional and illegal. So what American would be so serf-like in their mentality as to believe that that's not a positive thing? And yet, in response to that, the U.S. government has done nothing but try to imprison Snowden for 8 years. And as he says, he has a family, an American wife, American children. He's always said he wanted to come back to the United States. And so, yes, he does need stability because he can't leave that country. And citizenship is a way that gives him and his family that stability. And to try and depict it as something nefarious on his part.
That's a great point, too. Like Snowden would happily return to America if he was just pardoned by the president. I think he would happily return so he could, have some semblance of a normal life again if given the chance. So we kind of forced him to have to take this route by persecuting him to the extent that we have and refusing to just pardon him and acknowledge that what he did was the correct.
And Machiavellian the United States government is that they were so pissed at what Edward Snowden revealed, because it was all 100% true, that they set his story up in such a way. This is how powerful they are, that they actually manufactured this as a lane for them to go down. They planted the seeds for this back in 2014, 2015, right? Again, they downed this man's plane from Hong Kong in Moscow, right? They downed it in Russia. They were like, we will shoot this motherfucker out of the sky. I don't know the specifics of how that negotiating went, but the plane goes down in Moscow. He spends all this time in fucking the airport, right? We talked about this a little bit earlier, but like it all makes it sound like he was just going there to be like a fucking Russian spy. Now they can turn around and denounce him for all of the fucking secrets that they've done. Like it's all so perfectly done to just go back to that same like fucking McCarthy smear that they've used for every single time that somebody exposes, catches the United States with their pants down, if you will. They go back to that same well. It's always the same story. Russian asset, Kremlin stooge, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, it's so fucking, you can just see through it so clearly.
By the way, speaking of McCarthyite smears, I found the thread on Twitter that I was referencing earlier. If you want to see some deranged liberal shit, this thread like blew up on Twitter, 22,000 likes. It's time for us to come to grips with the fact that the Snowden, Greenwald, Assange ops were all part of a years-long Russia-supported effort to upend the West. This has been evident to me for several years. Oh, wow. What a prophetic motherfucker, Dave Troy. It's amazing to me how people still don't believe it. And this hasn't even occurred to, can only respond with whataboutism. It's time to revisit this history and get at the deeper narratives. Game, we got to get Glenn back on the show and confront him about this, man. Be like, so the cat's out of the bag, bro.
Why didn't you invite us to in your effort to the fucking upend the West? Is like, what the hell, man? We never got a fucking phone call for that. I thought we were homies, man. Where was the invite? We wanted to take down the West with you. Yeah, look, this is obviously it's like the extreme derangement, but yeah, I mean, look, they go on to talk about for the rest of the clip more about like Donald Trump and how Donald Trump had initially kind of been interested in pardoning Edward Snowden and also potentially Julian Assange, but specifically Edward Snowden. And then, as Glenn's talked about on our show before in the past, there was the Mitch McConnells and the Marco Rubio of the world said, hey, we will impeach your fucking ass with the Democrats if you do this. And it was like, oh, okay. A lot of people, they speculate at the end of this. We don't know for sure, obviously, that some of the articles that some of the documents that were found at Mar-a-Lago actually probably pertained to Russiagate and were articles that, Trump thought proved his innocence and exonerated him. So that's one of the things that they speculate was there. And I just wanted to make that connection back to, again, Russiagate. It was all part of like, kind of the deep state, like getting back at anybody who opposed them. They were going to put Julian Assange, they were going to put Edward Snowden, all of these people in their like Russiagate web. And remember, Gavin and I are not simps for Donald Trump. He committed a bunch of crimes. What he did not do was act as a Kremlin puppet in the 2016 election. No, Hillary Clinton just lost so badly. Now they're going to try and paint all of this. Like, that's, I imagine what this guy's saying. Like, I've known for years, like since Russiagate, I've known that it was Assange and Snowden that were working with that's like, obviously that's not true. That's all rooted in lies. That's the CIA talking. That's them trying to justify whatever proxy situations they have going on there. That's 100% accurate. So I don't know. I just think that, one, it's interesting how, like, again, just how deep the deep state runs, man. I don't know. I sound like a fucking like stoner fucking guy, but really it's true. Like the CIA and the NSA, they are all so in bed together and they're working on stories and they will slander you and they will character assassinate you. And they will lump guys who like Edward Snowden. I don't agree with on everything. He's way too into crypto for me. We disagree on that, but the dude is not a right winger. This dude has no sympathy for Donald Trump. The dude is like, he might lean libertarian in some ways economically that are for my taste, but he is like a fucking stern comrade when it comes to like egalitarian rights and like, civil liberties and those kinds of things. Right. So anyway. Oh, Spike tweeted about this and it looks like it did pretty well.
Yeah, I think that Edward Snowden, we actually spoke to Spike Cohen on early back in the history of the Vanguard when Spike was the vice presidential candidate for the Libertarians. We had him on the show. Interesting guy. Obviously disagree with him on quite a lot, but I think this is actually accurate. 3 things to remember about Snowden. It's because of him that we know the NSA was illegally collecting all of our electronic communications. That's undeniably true. He tried getting asylum for 27 other countries. You think Russia was his first choice? You want to live in a fucking Siberian tundra, motherfucker? Probably dude wanted to live in Tahiti or some shit. Come on. He then number 3, he gave all of his documents to American journalists before going to Russia. Again, 3 indisputable facts that I think really push back on some of this deranged McCarthyite idiocy that we're seeing from some of the mainstream liberal class.
Oh, 100%, dude. And the fact that they are trying to portray him as like some like, you know, conspiracy theorist with like Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin and Julian Assange, like it's embarrassing. It's pathetic. It shouldn't work on anybody, but it unfortunately is a salient fucking presentation to the people whose minds have been just like straight up fucking stirred in a blender by MSNBC. This is just like a little bit, this is what they're craving. This is the explanation. This is what they've been waiting for all along. And now he's a citizen and like, I don't know. It's such horse shit. Shout out to Spike for making this, clear fucking tweet that essentially just reveals it all. Yeah, I think we've had Spike on the show twice. He actually, yeah. He's a good faith actor, even though we disagree with him on all kinds of shit. You know, it's just like we just see the world so differently. Sometimes it's fun to engage. I'd have him back on the show soon if he wanted to. But anyway, yeah. Shout out to Glenn and the people at Breaking Point for kind of breaking that down. I thought that he made a lot of really good points, especially when he's like, think about how many things that have Joe Biden's signature on them that Joe Biden never sees or thinks about in his entire life. It's just like a stamping proceeding. He was like, other countries have bureaucracy too. Like, do you think Putin's like fucking meticulously going over every fucking application? No. Obviously Putin could be like, don't fucking give it to that guy, and then that would make its way down. But he's apparently has no problem pissing off the West by harboring, one of their most wanted fugitives. And thank God that Snowden is in Russia and not in a fucking, concrete hole in Colorado at a maximum security prison.
Yeah, 100%. That's so accurate. So yeah, do you want to watch any more of this clip, or do you think we got the gist of it, Zach? Probably got the gist of it. All right. Well, is there any other stories? No, we had a couple other things you might have wanted to talk about. Do we have time?
Shout out really quickly. A lot of people probably saw this shit on Twitter, but I wanted to throw it up here. And that's just something that we all have to agree. Whenever anybody whenever anybody talks about the Democrats as like the antidote to anything, right? You have to remember that this is still what you're fucking dealing with. So a shout out to you, Unusual Whales. This is like a stock trading, straight up fucking stock trading Twitter. They tweet all the time. So when I lost this thread, it was a pain in the ass finding it again. But anyway, breaking. The House leadership doesn't currently have the votes to pass the congressional stock trading bill, given the number of quote, rank and file Democrats who are actively opposed, per Punchbowl News. Rank and file Democrats is the language that's being described by Punchbowl News. So what does that mean? It means that they all are in Congress for the free lunch. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I don't know, man. You might have some crazy fuckers that you would be really shocked that are like, oh, I don't actually want to not be able to trade stocks. Like, it might not just be the super old odious people that immediately jump to mind. I'm trying to think. I don't know that many. Like I wouldn't be surprised if somebody like Sharice Davids is like, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about this. I don't know. We don't know. It hasn't been released. That's just a speculation that I have. But either way, fucking embarrassing that they can't even do this blatantly obvious thing and be like, hey, do you guys, but it's kind of like investigating yourself, right? There's all those memes about it, right? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, you're not going to do that. Who's going to fucking come in and vote to take away their right to fucking rip off the American people? That's like every politician's main aspiration, right? I've seen House of Cards. So anyway, I just thought this was a good note to end on. Reminder that we have no heroes and we have no good options. So we got to make do with what we've got. Yeah, I don't know. I thought we had a good chat today. The MSNBC guard back at it.
So Zach, you don't think that the stock trader in chief, Nancy Pelosi, is going to whip some votes to make sure that bill passes? I can't believe you don't think that.
I just don't see it. I hope that but no, obviously no. The Nancy Pelosi's husband. I mean, everybody's breathing a sigh of relief. I bet you Ro Khanna is breathing a sigh of relief. He's like, well, I couldn't have publicly supported that and kept my reputation, but Jesus Christ, I like making some money off my wife's dividends. You know what I'm saying? Just saying. It's so obvious. It's the fact that like you can't even like. There's no good way to publicly like not support that bill, which just means everybody's keeping quiet about it and just being like, no, we don't have enough votes. Sorry, guys. Nobody wants to come out and say, yeah, I haven't read that bill, but I'm not willing to take away, lend or take my support. Nobody wants to come out and be the guy that's for stock trading in Congress, right? So I imagine it'll just fucking fall by the wayside, and it definitely wouldn't pass in the Senate. So.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, it's still a possibility it passes, right? Like it's not for sure. It hasn't actually happened yet, so it still might happen. Hopefully it does. But I doubt it.
Yeah, from what I've read, it's like I don't even know if they're going to still have the floor vote on it, because it's looking like they would be embarrassing to Nancy Pelosi to watch it not go through. But I don't know. They might still have it. We'll see.
Yeah, what a disgrace. I mean, what an easy win. And like you said, it's like, yeah, what a shock. The Congress isn't going to regulate themselves. It's like, it's just so stupid. Like there should be some other fucking body that tries to make these regulations or like enforce these regulations. Cause yeah, it's like, of course, Congress isn't going to regulate itself when it comes to their own self-enrichment. That's ridiculous. Anyway, thank you so much, Addy, for the $9.99. I view Snowden as a hero. How many of us would be willing to make the sacrifice he did? I know I wouldn't. This man will probably never come home again. Well, thank you so much for the generous super chat, Eddie. Really appreciate that. And absolutely. I mean, it's easy. It's the whole Snowden thing has become like such a, it seems like distant, memory now. It happened so long ago, not that long ago, but, time moves so quickly, so much stuff happening. But yeah, this dude literally upended his entire life. He had a nice ass, bougie life and all upended straight up to go live in Russia and basically be a victim of political persecution by the biggest empire the world has ever known. So yeah, it's definitely easy to kind of just gloss over that, but it's so true.
Yeah, shout out to you, Addy. Really appreciate the donation. And yeah, this dude lived in Hawaii working under a pineapple farm and like a secret lair. Okay, dude sacrificed a lot. The whole enchilada. But I got to get the fuck out of here for the day. Gavin, I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to keep doing while I was gone, but feel free to. Obviously, I'm going to peace out to all of y'all, our patrons, everybody that keeps the wheels on our van going round and round and round. And then I got to deuce the fuck out of here. Peace out, guys.
Yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in today. Really appreciate it. And as always, would you like to start and end all of our shows with a big old shout out to the patron community. Thank you guys so much for the support. If you're interested in joining our patron community, if you're interested in, having your own name up there on that shout out screen, then please do consider hitting up the link in the description. It's patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. And it is going to be in the description of this live stream and of all of our video and live content. Again, it really, really helps out if you enjoy the show. If you appreciate our perspective and agree with us on our politics, then, please do consider helping us out. We're 100% independent. We obviously don't take any money from sponsorships or anything like that. 100% viewer funded. So it really, really does help out, even just a couple bucks a month. So again, huge shout out to the patron community. You guys make this show possible. We couldn't do it without you. And with all that said, I thought this was a great stream. Thought we had a really good conversation today. Really appreciate hearing from everyone in chat. And the last thing I'll ask of you guys is just to hit that like button on the way out. Obviously, subscribe as well if you're not already, but I assume all of you comrades are already subscribed to the Vanguard. So just hit that like button on the way out if you haven't already. It really does help us beat that censorious algorithm. So thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time, probably tomorrow. Also, our patron Q&A is coming up at the end of the month. So if you're a patron, stay tuned. I'm about to post the little message on Patreon where you can send your questions in. I'm really excited for this month's Q&A. So hit up that too. Again, if you're a member of the patron community. So thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time.